Hello, friends, and welcome to 10 Points Under, where 10 points is the value of a life for Tor-Kul-Na. This is Big Bullfrog coming at you today, as usual, and joining me today for the second time is Chris Perkins, one of the, I'd say, Heroscape greats, big name at Gen Con and online Heroscape, and gonna bring some excellent insight to this game. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, and thank you for the kind words. It's great to be back here.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you back. It's been a while since we've recorded together. You were actually among the first people who we had guest star on back when True was co-hosting with me every video. So it's cool to have a familiar face back and be able to just talk about a cool game going on here.
Yeah, for sure. Looks like we got some good figures out on this map.
Yeah, we do. This is going to be a really good one. So also speaking about like big names, we've got a vegetarian versus duck game going on here. I think we've had at least one veggie v duck game before on the channel exclusively. We've also had plenty of games with veggie, plenty of games with duck. They're great players. This is from the online con that's happening as of recording. This is happening right now. This game actually happened last night, so this is a very fresh game. Again, as of recording. As of posting the video, I'm not exactly sure when that's going to happen. It could be a week, possibly more later, but we'll just see how that pans out. But this is from the pod draft tournament. So what happens with this is basically each player brings two mini armies. I believe they're between, like, Chris might have to correct me, I believe they're like 225 to 325 points in size, and so you bring two of those. And then basically you take turns picking out of those four pods which one you want to play. That's correct, right?
Mostly, except for the second pick picks two pods at the same time. So one person takes one pod, and then the second player takes two of the remaining three pods.
Okay. Yeah, so pick one, pick two, pick one. I don't know if that's how the pattern went here, but it's a cool format. I've actually never tried it, even though it's one of my bucket list formats that I've really wanted to play and just wasn't able to. Basically got a lot of babysitting this week, so I'm not able to join in on the tournament, which is too bad. But so for this one, both players actually ended up with both of their pods that they brought to the game. Over on the left, we've got Vegetarian. Vegetarian, his first pod was 3 squads of Knights of Weston and Sir Gilbert. He did drop one Knight of Weston because of the figure limit. Figure limit is 12. That was 13 figures. He dropped one Knight of Weston. His other pod is 2 squads of Stingers, Kaemon, Awa, and Raelin. Rise of the Valkyrie version as always. And he brought those 2 pods. He ended up picking them both. Again, I don't remember what the pattern is. I don't think I even saw what the pattern was, but he ended up with both pods that he brought, and it's a pretty meaty army here. The other army for Doc is also very meaty. His 2 pods were Braxas along with 2 squads of Deathreavers, and I believe Otonashi was in that pod. And then the other pod was 3 squads of Nagrubs, Tor-Kul-Na, and Eldgrim the Viking champion. Again, 2 really strong pods. I'm really excited to see this matchup because these are a lot of strong figures and just like a lot of power on the board for this game.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say both these groups of pods are definitely on the strong side of what's been brought to this particular tournament. One of the nice things about pod draft, similarly to Bring 2 and other formats like that, is that you have a lot of flexibility with bringing 2 strong armies, 2 medium armies, 2 weak armies, really anything on the spectrum as long as they're reasonably balanced.
Yeah, and I think that's one of my favorite parts. And like here we see kind of like, I think Veggie and Doc have very similar pods in that when combined together, there's a lot of give and take between these 2 armies. So it'll be really cool to see how it goes. But we'll go ahead and jump on into the game, and we'll see how it goes from there. So we've got Doc.
So it looks like Doc's opening up with some rats there.
Mm-hmm. A couple order markers on Deathreavers, got a Braxas, and then looks like a couple of Knights for Vegetarian coming out. And so like I said a little bit earlier, this game did happen last night. So this is kind of fresh in both my mind and Chris Perkins' mind. Not that, Chris Perkins was playing a game while this game was happening. He was playing in the tournament. I did watch about half of the game in total, just from coming in and out while it was recording. So we do know the spoilers of how it goes on the whole, but it should be a really good game. In fact, to kind of just hype up this game a little bit, Doc sent me a message after he finished playing the game against Vegetarian and said that I should just skip straight to this game because of how good it was. So this will be a really fun one. I'm really looking forward to see how the interactions between these work out.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at the map, in terms of the glyphs, at least in the early game with the way they've set up their order markers, it doesn't look like Ulanivia is going to have that huge of an effect, since most of the heroes are going to be wanting to use their special attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Like I imagine Braxas is going to want to be acid breathing a lot. If Kaemon gets in there, is probably going to be using quick release. So, I mean, until unless Tor-Kul-Na comes into the mix, I would think that Ulanivia wouldn't be the primary focus, as much as if it was, say, Valda or something like that. That would help moving out those heroes a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So that might free up both players to focus a little bit more on the high ground in the middle of the map instead of having to worry about the glyph on the north as much.
Yeah, that's very true. Really not a ton of unique attack power in this matchup. You do have Tor-Kul-Na and like maybe a last Hail Mary with Eldgrim if you wanted to try to get 2 attacks to 3 with him, but at that point you've probably lost anyway. But yeah, no, that's really good. So going into this matchup, how do you think you would like focus on developing these armies? It looks like Doc's actually going for both glyphs.
Yeah, he is, and I'm thinking part of the rationale, especially on Wanik, is probably that Doc probably wants to try and draw attacks onto those rats to bring up some more.
Mm-hmm.
Like once those rats are moved onto those glyphs, it certainly is a very juicy target for an attack, especially the Wanik glyph, because with the forward squad of knights that looks like they've moved down towards the south, which makes sense because again, I think Wanik is probably a lot more useful for them in the early game than Ulanivia would be. And even if the Ulanivia glyph isn't actively helping, it's still a choke point to where it's harder for stingers or knights to move up around the north end having a rat there. So
that's true.
Certainly doesn't hurt. Certainly doesn't hurt having that rat there. Although I doubt that Doc's going to actually be using the advantage of that glyph for a while.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I could see kind of trying to like tie down the flanks and force figures into the middle to make it a little bit easier for like Braxas only has 4 range for her acid breath, so being able to just like focus on figures, while she's behind a screen, she doesn't want them just going straight through at her. I think maybe same thing for Tor-Kul-Na a bit. He wants figures to be on a lot of even level ground, and that kind of has that option through here, although I'm sure Veggie's not going to make that easy for him.
Yeah, for sure. Although with Tor-Kul-Na, it's quite a bit easier to maintain that screen in front, just because you're actively bonding with them.
Mm-hmm.
So with Braxas, it's a little bit harder. Braxas is a little more dependent on Veggie actually attacking the rats to allow them to continue advancing that screen.
Yeah, that's true. And so I do wonder actually kind of with that, because we've got Kaemon over here who's for 120 points, she's a pretty good rat wrecker, and just being able to move up here and start taking shots at rats right away. I mean, okay, so I'll say right here, right now, I'm not a great player with Deathreavers. I can play okay with them for like a local meta, but I would not have the confidence going into a high level meta to like bring them or try to play them. So that does, to me, that strikes me as a little odd to go this far out with just a couple rats at first while you still got some in reserve when Kaemon can come up and start shooting at them. I'm sure there's more interplay to it than that. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts in these armies.
Kaemon certainly could come up and do that, but in the process of doing that, Braxas is going to be charging the northern half of the start zone, just acid spraying all sorts of knights and stingers. So, I mean, if that were to happen, I'm pretty sure Doc would be willing to trade, say, those 2 rats in the south for acid breathing like 3 knights and maybe a stinger up north.
Mm-hmm.
It ends up being a pretty positive trade in the long run.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great point. Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, Braxas being able to cut through all of that stuff, especially like, I mean, if Veggie was able to like get a nice pod around Raelin right down here, with Braxas you just don't care about defense. It's so nice. I've been doing a lot of Braxas games lately too, actually. I've been talking a lot about how Braxas just don't care about Raelin.
Yeah, Braxas certainly packs a lot of offense. I mean, obviously the big downside with Braxas is if you don't have green scales, then not having a bonding squad to keep advancing that screen with, as mentioned earlier. But certainly a ton of offense and potential, especially against a large squad army like what Veggie has in this matchup here.
Yeah, especially when you've got like knights that you generally are relying on their solid defense stat. And just looking at how this could develop, I don't know if we'll see Braxas move in super early, but just kind of like going off the point that you made earlier, this does look like a really good spot to just bring in more Deathreavers and be able to start using Braxas to shoot guys. I mean, I'm motioning back here. Probably have to be a little bit more aggressive with the Deathreavers because I'm sure Veggie's not just going to rush right into Deathreavers on height.
Yeah, and then Veggie's also been spreading out the knights pretty well between the north and the south. My guess there is that the idea is to give Braxas less safe options as to where she could move up to. Because if like all the knights were in the south, then it'd be a lot easier for Braxas to move up into the north and start acid breathing. Mm-hmm. So like at this point, with any form of a decent Jandar dispatch, you'd be able to get knights to engage Braxas and pretty much anywhere that Braxas would want to go to where she'd be able to get off of, at least 2 or 3 acid sprays. And yeah, it does look like Doc's opening up with some more Reaver, at least one Reaver order marker, to try and get them up a little bit further to push that screen like you were mentioning.
Yep, totally called it. Got Kaemon killing the rat on Rannoch. Ah, man, I just know this game so well, man. This. But yeah, I think just like bouncing in those order markers to move more rats and keep them like a presence, especially when you're going against an army that has a special attacker. That's something that, I mean, honestly, that's one reason why I'm really looking forward to watching this game, is because I know that Doc is kind of a rat master, and he's really good at just keeping that screen up while balancing with other units that he's using behind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially a lot of what it looks like the rat placement early is designed to do is just to not allow the knights to, certainly allowing the knights to engage them, but not be able to get past them without being forced to attack a rat. Because really, just any attack anywhere on those rats from someone other than Kaemon is Doc's ideal outcome.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Veggie can go pure Kaemon here, but then, I mean, like you mentioned earlier, he's not moving those knights, and they can get picked off by Braxas. I am wondering, when do you think, I don't know, do you think Doc ever hardcore commits to Braxas, or is she more of like a 1 or 2 order markers around, at least for like the foreseeable future, and just kind of like picking off knights? I mean, because she wouldn't want to move too far in, like you said with Jandar's dispatch, those knights can catch really quick. And so I think, I'm kind of thinking right now, I guess, you keep bouncing in rats and then bouncing Braxas to take a knight or 2, and then moving more rats is like, they take hits. Maybe Kaemon gets an order marker and takes out another 1 or 2. Like, is it kind of that bouncing game, or do you think there's a point where Doc commits to Braxas and going in and just trying to take out as many knights as possible?
I think that point comes if Doc gets a little bit more behind.
Okay.
Like that's certainly a higher variance play. Mm-hmm. Like when you're coming in with Braxas like that, because generally, if you're going to bring in Braxas with that form of a sort of all-in offense in the way you're describing, you're very reliant on getting at least 2 of the 3 acid breaths going through. Which, while is the expected value, if only if 0 or 1 of them goes through, the problem ends up being with that range 4, you're almost always going to get engaged by all 3 of the squad figures you're targeting. So right. You really do need at least 2 of 3 to be consistently going through to avoid a pretty substantial counter strike. I mean, in this case, it doesn't really matter whether it's rats or stingers or Kaemon. They're all bringing at least 3 dice with each attack, if not more.
That's true. We've got a lot of Braxas killers here.
Yeah, so, I mean, lots of squaddies, but all squaddies with very, very high offensive potential.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're seeing that Braxas order marker. I think, let's see. I think maybe just kind of like swinging up here, going for 1 knight. Do you try to like spray Gilbert? I think that's another interesting talking point when it comes to Braxas is like, do you go for heroes? Because if you auto-destroy a hero, that's awesome. But, sometimes that can be just wasting something. I think it
largely depends on where the offense is coming from your opponent's army.
Mm-hmm.
So if you... that and also a combination of what's in range of engaging Braxas. So right. Like Braxas is certainly a lot more afraid of 3 knights engaging than say Gilbert.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like we're going to go for 2 knights and Gilbert.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's all that's in range of the spot where Braxas went to. True, so pretty safe spot altogether. I mean, 1 knight could get in there and get a single adjacency to Braxas, but even if they do, one of the really nice things about Braxas is the ability to target non-adjacent figures. So even if a knight does get up there, you're still able to get off those 3 acid breaths. So you're able to take that single engagement a lot easier with Braxas than you would be with, say, Nilfheim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point. See, it looks like Doc's maybe considering a little bit different position, maybe. Okay.
Looks like, okay, I guess the 8 must have been on Gilbert then.
Mm-hmm.
So that because they only killed 1. So, okay, 1 knight taken out.
Yeah, and so, just like you said, that's kind of like one of those situations that you don't want to happen. And now we've got Kaemon Okay, nice showing, nice showing. Oh, wow.
Oof.
Yeah, that's a big oof. Man, 6 wounds on Braxas. That could have easily been a kill if Doc hadn't got those shields. Holy cow, that's a huge set of rolls there.
8 out of 8 has a unique way of swinging the matchup very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Although some solid asset on the flip side there.
That's true, yeah.
Although not quite enough on Kaemon. I think Kaemon was targeted there. Doc
Yeah, he was
fast.
Yeah, he was targeted first. Should have reversed that order. One of those things, man. You just got to get used to those dice rolls. But yeah, taking out 2 knights there. So that's 3 knights, right? 3 knights that she's killed because she only got the first one last round or last turn.
Yeah, that's right. And I would say Braxas is in a very safe spot with that rat screen, but with only 2 life left and Kaemon sitting right there, ready to double quick release again.
Mm-hmm.
One order marker on Kaemon. I would imagine that's OM1. Yes, yeah, and it is. Yep, so pretty low risk way to try and finish off Braxas before anything else can happen.
Right, yeah. And 2 attacks of 4, I mean, I think on average that goes through. You're usually expecting 1 wound per 4v3, so.
Yeah, for sure. At least a little over half the time, probably Braxas is going to end up falling.
Yep.
And immediately.
Yeah.
So that was 11 out of 12 skulls from Kaemon.
Holy cow, yeah. Okay.
A very strong opening. certainly killed his points worth in this matchup.
Not bad. You know, it's okay for the little samurai guy.
And so now Veggie can afford to move up pretty liberally with Gilbert and any knights that he wants to, given the real lack of a counter strike anywhere. Mm-hmm. If I saw right, it looked like probably 2 order markers were on Braxas, maybe just 1, but
there were 2. Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if the second was a 2 instead of the X.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends on like how big of a swing Doc was going for there, and the other thing is now he's kind of like walling off this. Not really walling because there are Deathreavers in there, but this is just going to become a pretty difficult area for Tor-Kul-Na to try to get up into.
Yeah, for sure. And normally you don't want to be engaging the rats as much because they end up acting as a screen. But in this case, the screen is now not nearly as useful for Doc with all of his offense coming from melee figures, primarily Tor-Kul-Na. So, I mean, the rat screen went from fantastic for Braxas to more of just an unnecessary annoyance.
Right. Yeah, and he can kind of just like take his time killing them. I mean, doesn't want them to sit around forever, but yeah, just where they're going to be gumming things up for Tor-Kul-Na. I mean, I guess he can use the rats to be able to block off the Nagrubs for Tor-Kul-Na's reserves, so that'll be nice. But I mean, that's still a lot of attention that he'll be able to focus on Tor-Kul-Na, depending on Tor-Kul-Na's approach. I know Doc is like, so I know I called him the Rat Master earlier. He's also Tor-Kul-Na Master. I think Tor-Kul-Na is his favorite army, I believe. You could like half quote me on that, I think. But I know he loves Tor-Kul-Na.
I think it's yeah. I've definitely heard it as a favorite for any format where your opponent might end up having to play your army, just because it's a little bit more on the niche / lesser played and higher in skill level, with a lot of very very tough decision points in the process of moving.
Yeah, I could see that. That'll be so I'm really excited to see how he plays Tor-Kul-Na. I used to play Tor-Kul-Na a lot. I actually haven't played Tor-Kul-Na for a long time, and I cannot claim to be an expert on him at all.
His order marker 2 is actually on the rats, so only 1 order marker lost on Braxas.
That's pretty good, and he's gonna have some 2v4s and get into
three high. 4, actually, all 4 attacks should end up being hided.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 4 attacks. Well, rats are never known for their offense, even from height.
They tend to have, those occasional games where they take out Hydra or something like that. But yeah, I mean, but being able to get those 2v4s, which, aren't great, but they're not the worst thing ever, and also develop up a screen at the same time, that's pretty nice.
So in terms of the matchup as a whole at this point, like it's definitely Doc is seemingly pretty far behind, having lost Braxas with only taking out a few knights. The biggest uphill battle, though, is just the amount of ranged figures that Veggie has behind what's now a screen of both rats and knights that are going to be in the way of Tor-Kul-Na being able to break through.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we've already seen Kaemon's potential in this game. So I think in terms of moving up Tor-Kul-Na, which is probably going to be Doc's major offense starting next round, just trying to find spots to potentially trample stomp where you're not in a spot where Kaemon can jump up to a nice pinnacle and double quick release you
Right
off the bat.
Yeah, that'll have to be a really careful approach from Doc, at least in the beginning.
And you're seeing Veggie largely focus on the south end of the map right now, which makes a lot of sense given that Wanik is certainly the place where you want your pod to end up. She's very much from Veggie's perspective, you're certainly ahead at this point in time, and really what you want is just to set up your full army in Raelin's aura in a spot that forces Tor-Kul-Na to try and charge through a bunch of knights while you've got stingers and Kaemon shooting from behind that screen.
Yeah, that'll be a nice place. And on that note, you can kind of see how Doc is. I mean, part of it is just that's where his rats ended up, but he's doing a pretty good job of just blocking off flow to that area. And also has a good couple rats up here ready to take on any reinforcements coming in. So the rat development is pretty good in that he's able to tie down a lot of key figures. And so, especially with Kaemon being double tied down right now, that should be a relatively safe approach, you would hope, for Tor-Kul-Na.
Yeah, you'll have at least one order marker where Kaemon has to take out rats first before he's able to focus on Tor-Kul-Na. And Kaemon could double disengage to try and get on even height, but from Veggie's perspective, that certainly is a little bit higher risk play. And when you have the advantage, generally you want to try and avoid taking as many super high risk plays as necessary.
Right. Yeah, especially where he's so much less likely to get those wounds through on Tor-Kul-Na than on Braxas. That was quite the nutsy couple turns on Braxas. That was crazy.
Yeah, 11 out of 12 is it takes skill to roll that well sometimes.
Yeah.
Skill and an amazing amount of luck at exactly the right time.
Oh. 1 for Wanik.
Wow. Okay, that's some reverse luck there for Veggie. It's actually interesting because that was pretty much the only knight that had gotten through the rat screen at that point in time. As well.
And that's one knight that maybe could have slowed down Tor-Kul-Na as Veggie tries to clear out rats more.
Yeah, it also gives Tor-Kul-Na a lot more options though, because like what we were talking about before with sitting on Wanik, really forcing Tor-Kul-Na to charge directly into you to avoid taking all those auto wounds. Now without anyone on Wanik and with the rats possibly denying Wanik for another round or two, Tor-Kul-Na's got a lot more flexibility with where he might choose to initially make that engagement at, without having to worry about losing a couple Nagrubs or wounding Eldgrim to Wanik. I would certainly imagine that Doc's plan would be to put Wanik hits on Eldgrim, which can soak him for a little while, but with the amount of figures Veggie has left, if he were to just camp on Wanik, it's likely he's going to get a lot more than just 3 rounds worth of Wanik hits. So eventually they're going to start going to places that are a lot more important.
Right. And so Kaemon did kill these 2 Deathreavers right here. Bring himself up, and so now we've got Doc. Do you think you try to go for a trample stomp on this knight in order to engage and start attacking Kaemon? Or are you going around this way?
Yeah, it looks like he's choosing to go around the south end there.
Okay, so go around, maybe focus on Raelin.
Part of the problem, I mean, you certainly could move in there and hope for the trample stomp to then engage Kaemon, but you're looking at a Kaemon with 7 defense and counterstrike, which is not the most fun attack to go into, for sure. Would end up there's a rat on Ulanivia right now, so that would be a 7v7.
Which is kind of scary
not
when you've got one main offensive figure left.
Yeah. The other big downside to it, though, is that if there are any order markers on knights, that's a really, really terrible spot for a counterstrike from knights. You end up getting a heighted Gilbert, a heighted knight that's adjacent to Gilbert, another knight. And even if you do kill Kaemon, then you just get another knight taking that spot, also heighted. So Tor-Kul-Na ends up just taking a ton of heighted attacks down from those knights. Because even if you kill Kaemon there, you're almost never going to be able to get Tor-Kul-Na up on that double 3 height there. Because just because Veggie's got heroes on offset there to where there's not an easy spot to get to. So even if you do end up killing Kaemon, those spots are going to end up being filled by squad figures, and it's just going to be very hard to ever get Tor-Kul-Na out of being out of the low ground.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's... Yeah, now that I'm looking at it a little bit more, that's kind of a death trap for for a big hero.
The other problem with being there is it doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to use your Nagrubs offensively. They're not great offensive pieces for sure, but you still want to be taking those pot shots with them. So eventually a couple of those end up going through, and if you put Tor-Kul-Na there, you're blocking access to your own Nagrubs from being able to get in. You can get one Nagrub attacking up on Gilbert per turn, so that's a 2v also 7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which also isn't happy at all. Okay, so going in for the trample stomp here. Probably going in for the Raelin swings. Yeah, 7v3 for Raelin. That's pretty good. Oh, plus the trample stomp.
Well, 2 out of 7, but still at least getting some wounds going through there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2 wounds going through. That's still pretty nice. I need to, let's see, so trample stomp, that's a 9 or higher for it to trigger, right? 8 or higher.
8 or higher, yeah. Still a very, dicey spot to put Tor-Kul-Na. Not that Doc really has a whole lot of choice here, given how far behind he is at the moment. But certainly, like, one really strong Knight's turn. I don't remember where all the order markers were at this round. I didn't check that before I ended up scrolling past them. But if there any order markers on the Knights would be a very scary thing, given where Tor-Kul-Na is positioned at. Although the Nagrub that just moved up to engage that one Knight is a quite nice little spot, because now Veggie wouldn't be able to get any Knights up on that 3-hex height without taking a disengagement.
Yeah, that's a very good play from Doc that does really limit, and that keeps the Gilbert boosted height attack down.
Yeah, I mean Gilbert still may be able to kill that Nagrub first, but it's at least a little bit of a roadblock to give yourself a shot to avoid that Knight taking that high ground.
Attack going through. I know that. I mean, you'll often hear Doc say that the best part of a Tor-Kul-Na army is the Nagrubs, and so just like, and I think you can kind of see that here, being able to like screen, get some shots in. Okay, so that Nagrub does go down, but just having that extra versatility for the Nagrubs, like, I mean, really is nice.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if you're looking at comparing Nagrubs with most of the other cheap screen options that are out there, they end up costing the same amount as a rat. Both a single Nagrub and a single rat are worth 10 points. But from a screening perspective, with the Nagrubs, you're bonding with them, so you're not losing attack activations on Tor-Kul-Na, which is certainly nice. On the flip side, when comparing them with, say, Greenscales end up costing you twice as much per figure. Obviously, they've got a lot more offensive potential, but at the same time, throwing away, it's a lot easier to throw away a 10-point figure to get a good spot than it is to throw away a 20-point figure.
Right.
Although now we're seeing that Knight surrounding that I was mentioning before, where all of a sudden Veggie just gets massive amounts of attacks, although they appear to be ineffective attacks.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of what Kaemon brought to the table earlier. So that was
a big turn for Doc. Those Knights could have easily come close to finishing off Tor-Kul-Na. And part of the problem for Doc now is that he can't get Nagrubs adjacent to Tor-Kul-Na to heal either. So that's going to be a tough spot for him to get out of.
Right, it looks like the trample stomping is going to begin.
So and Doc is...
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. That is a triple disengage.
Yeah.
For 5 dice.
For 5 dice, yeah.
Wow.
Man, that's...
And, and it's that... I think many players would be afraid to take that move there, just because the scary thought of it. And certainly, taking those 5 leaving engagement dice is definitely scary, but there comes a point where you're so far behind in the game that you have to take massive swings like that to try and get back in it.
Right.
And that one certainly paid off. Trample Stomp a Knight and then smash Raelin.
Yeah, that's a huge turn for him. Opens up this area for Nagrub reinforcements to come through. Yeah. I mean, you hear Doc talk about that a lot, just like, knowing when you're behind and knowing when you need to go for those big swings. And I mean, it paid off. It 100% paid off right there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was a huge turn for Doc. Both the knights all missing, and then Tor-Kul-Na managing to take that miraculously low leaving engagement swipes.
Right. And so just like that, I mean, Doc's looking in after Braxas fell, looking really, really dicey for Doc. But I mean, he's found a way back into the game.
It's certainly a lot closer than it was, 3 minutes ago. That being said, Veggie winning initiative here, he could still easily kill Tor-Kul-Na in a turn or two.
That's true, yeah.
Because Tor-Kul-Na still can't retreat without, again, taking that same massive leaving engagement swipes. Because he still ends up being adjacent to 3 knights here. Mm-hmm. Whereas if he were to end up wanting to retreat out the back end, like Tor-Kul-Na would probably eat the Nagrub to the south of him. 3, yeah, and so likely Veggie will end up going first.
Yep.
Healthy mix of knights and stingers. My guess would be 1 is on knights. Stingers, okay. So actually, a little bit surprised by that.
Interesting. He'll have.
Oh, I see. So they're able to jump up on height. That makes some sense.
2 attacks down. Guessing might even with the other one, depending on where he wants to move it. Is this case? So, even though I'm always arguing against Stinger Drain, I always like to bring it up at the same time, because I feel like this is a point where like a lot of players would be like, oh crap, that Tor-Kul-Na just like walked all over that knight and Raelin and took nothing in return. Do you think it's ever worth, or like, do you think it's worth Stinger Draining to try to just put wounds on Tor-Kul-Na, or?
Not in this situation.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I'm a little bit more pro drain than some players I've talked to. Like,
okay,
it's draining in general from a pure expectation standpoint. Draining is not a good play. Like, if your goal is to just maximize the number of attacks you get on average in a given turn, you're never going to end up draining. So really, you only want to end up draining if you're so far behind in a matchup that the average number of attack outcomes is nowhere near enough for you to win. Whereas in this case, if Veggie's able to pull off an average, like Veggie's still in a very good spot. Tor-Kul-Na is completely surrounded by knights and stingers. Mm-hmm. They can put a lot of wounds on him. And even beyond that, though, one of the other important factors with this particular turn that Veggie just did with not draining is the benefit that you get from killing Nagrubs adjacent to Tor-Kul-Na.
Right.
Because you end up denying him an additional life. And you don't need that drain to kill that Nagrub. So absent the drain, you're still shooting down on the Nagrub 4v2, which ends up, and a Nagrub is a life for Tor-Kul-Na when you're facing that army. So taking those additional shots on just Nagrubs is important, just as important as putting a wound on Tor-Kul-Na would be.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking, I mean, like, that'd probably be a situation where I'd try to encourage my opponent to drain, honestly. Because, I mean, yeah, just like you said, killing Nagrubs, you don't need the drain. Especially, like, Veggie's so far ahead. If Stinger Drain, I mean, like, it's closer, for sure. But I feel like he still has a good advantage, for the most part. That, like, failing the drain especially would put him super behind.
Yeah, especially. Because even if you don't get any wounds on Tor-Kul-Na, failing the drain means you don't kill that Nagrub. Mm-hmm. And then so Tor-Kul-Na is getting a life back immediately from a failed drain there.
Yeah. So we've got knights coming in. We do have now 2 Nagrubs adjacent to Tor-Kul-Na. With the knights, let's see. So that's 3 symbols. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you won't even be able to stop Tor-Kul-Na from getting one of the lives back.
Yeah, that back Nagrub is certainly protected. You're just hoping to deal more than, with facing a Tor-Kul-Na army like this, your goal is just to do more than 1 wound of attack to Tor-Kul-Na at a time. Just keep that wound counter going up, even if it's going up slowly.
Mm-hmm. Kind of sort of similar to a Cyprian army, I think.
Kind of, although I think
there's definitely
with both armies, there are certainly differences. Both Cyprian and Tor-Kul-Na, when you're facing them, are quite interesting in the fact that oftentimes, I don't know about oftentimes, but there are a fair amount of instances where you're better off just not attacking the hero. I actually played my pod game last night, ended up being very similar to that. So my opponent had Cyprian, and I had a bunch of I had a bunch of Wormlings and Q10. And so I opened with the Wormlings, and my opponent opened with Cyprian. And so Cyprian can pretty much kill a Wormling each turn, but there's not a whole lot of benefit. Like what you're driving, there's not a whole lot of benefit in going after Cyprian in that case, because the Wormlings are almost never going to do more than one wound at a time. So I think a lot with both of those armies, often comes down to like, what are the odds that you can do more than one wound in a given turn? So if your average number of wounds is like 3, then it can make a lot of sense to try and start targeting that figure to bring him down. If your average number of wounds is pretty low, then it's a lot harsher. Although while I'm talking about this, Doc is trample stomping through all sorts of squaddies.
Yeah. Oh, big whiff though.
Ooh.
So
yeah, trying to take out that stinger on height.
Lots of plays both ways going on in this game. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that's maybe one of the fun parts of running a Tor-Kul-Na army is just like, because like you said, unless you're like getting about 3 wounds per turn, it's probably not worth targeting him. With 5 defense, that's like, you need a lot of firepower to be, averaging 3 wounds a turn against Tor-Kul-Na. And so then you've got the Nagrubs to focus on. If you can keep them safe, then awesome, you're getting lives back anyway. Even if you can't keep them safe, I can see where they'd be nice distractions if you're using them well, to kind of like break up your opponent's forces, just making their...
just like that.
Yeah.
well timed.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And with Tor-Kul-Na especially, often just like the number of times where it makes sense to try and kill the Nagrub adjacent instead of taking the shot on him ends up just being probably a lot higher than many players would end up taking in an average setting. Just because if you're a choice between attacking a 5 life figure and a 2 or a 5 defense figure and a 2 defense figure, when they're effectively the same lives on the same figure, you want to end up taking the attacks on those Nagrubs a lot more.
Yeah. So I wonder if and you can kind of see, I mean, granted, a lot of this is just because Veggie had such a strong early game, and so he's already got figures in strong positions. But with Tor-Kul-Na being able to like engage figures and kind of like distract them and keep like knights from being able to comfortably get at the Nagrubs, Stingers have an easier time because they've got range. But even then, like you still got Tor-Kul-Na in a spot where he's just making things awkward enough. I don't know. I think there's a lot of cool. I'm kind of seeing why Doc likes this army, and like the tricks he can pull with it.
Yeah, for sure. One of the other things about Tor-Kul-Na builds is the sort of frequency with which Tor-Kul-Na can take leaving engagement attacks, and have them affect him a lot less than a lot of other figures because of how much you need to and want to be taking those trample stomps. Now, I'm not saying you should be looking to take a 5 dice leaving engagement all the time,
right?
Although it certainly worked out here, but just in general, with having the Nagrubs to heal lives, there are a lot more situations where taking a single leaving engagement or 2 to try and trample stomp through a big herd of squad figures can end up making a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because I did a game with Doc a couple days ago actually, and he was telling me about how like we talked about Tor-Kul-Na just a little bit because he was running him in the pod draft, and he told me how Tor-Kul-Na doesn't usually like playing into Knight armies because of their Coward's Reward and those 5 die leaving engagement swipes. So it was kind of funny to see him then get matched up against Veggie and have this matchup play out. But like, so just like kind of case in point, I don't know what Doc's going to do here, but as an example, do you think it's worth taking a single leaving engagement against a Stinger to come and trample stomp a knight over here?
Possibly. I'd say it depends a lot on where Veggie's order markers are at, which again I can't really see at the moment with the scribing scroll. Although wait, actually no. So this is the second OM3, so this is the end of the round.
Oh, okay. Okay, so he's just making an attack.
Yeah. Take out that Stinger.
Which I do also like. I mean, I'm not sure if... I mean, okay, so Doc made that play, so we'll say that was the better play. I do like that having Tor-Kul-Na back here is allowing Doc to take shots at both Knights and Stingers at the same time. There's not really like a screen for Veggie, especially now. And so he's able to just disrupt those attacks per order marker. The Knights are already down to 3 attacks per order marker with Gilbert.
Yeah, and I'd say that's probably why he went after the Stinger there, because just even if you get the trample stomp on that Knight, 1 versus 2 knights isn't a big difference. Like, Veggie's probably not taking any order markers on the knights next round, or at least wouldn't want to. Veggie would much rather take order markers with a full squad of stingers over the 2 knights. So I think that probably the major reason for targeting the stinger there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, especially with such a big beefy hero, being able to kill those attacks for order marker is nice. Another reason why Nagrubs are kind of nice, just like with how this is working out, a 2v3 when he takes it, that's going to be pretty okay.
Yeah, certainly a lot better than charging into that Knight Raelin pod from earlier.
Yeah. Tor-Kul-Na eats a grubby.
So nice. Doc wins a tight initiative there, 6-5 it looks like.
That's a very good initiative to get. So you've got actually only 1 order marker on stingers, so that's probably
my guess is with 2 order markers on Kaemon and Kaemon being so close to Tor-Kul-Na, it wouldn't be all that shocked to see order markers 1 and maybe 2 on Kaemon here.
Right. Yeah, because looking at where the stingers are, if he won a niche, he could get 2 attacks of 4 down, but then that's still the same as Kaemon. Would still have like 1 attack of 3, but if you lose,
so my guess here is we try to.
It's bad.
Probably trample stomp that knight and then probably swing up at Kaemon, given where the order markers are at this round. 4. Yeah, oh, that'll put some hurt there.
Nice swing there. Given
and the other big benefit to winning initiative here, besides just being able to attack first, is Doc could probably get one of those Nagrubs up to engage 2 stingers on the north, and to tie them up. So even if the order marker 1 is on, exactly right there. Yeah. So even if one of the order markers is on stingers, early, they're going to be able to get one less of those heighted shots that they would want to get down on DKN.
Yeah, so definitely a good call to be going with Kaemon a bit more heavily with that. Order marker 1 was on stingers though. You can still get going for the. I guess okay, so that is a nice thing about going stingers here instead. Actually, is being able to target that Nagrub. Didn't go through, but that can make sense to me.
This ends up being a lot riskier, though, for Veggie, because now Doc's in a really good position to try and take out Kaemon before he's able to take any turns.
Right, yeah.
And then end up killing an order marker. Yeah, so if that's OMs 2 and 3 on Kaemon, which it looks like it is, because I think it was 1 on stingers, 1 on knights, and 2 on Kaemon. There's a very real possibility here that Doc would be able to kill 2 of Veggie's order markers.
Which would just be absolute disaster for Veggie. See how he doesn't look like he can really get any trample stomps.
No, they're certainly set up to protect against that. Yeah. So he takes a living engage from Gilbert and then swings up at Kaemon. Oof, yeah, that should do him in.
Ooh, yeah, that's another big hit.
At least 1 lost order marker, quite possibly 2. Yeah, and just again tying up those stingers. The Nagrub attack going through would be great, but it's you're mostly just trying to deny that the heighted attack down. So how many Nagrubs does Doc have left at this point? I think it's just that 1.
Let's see, 1. Yeah, it looks like it's just the 1.
Yeah, and he was worried about losing him, so switching order markers to Tor-Kul-Na directly now.
Nice, so, good call, good timing.
Again, pretty difficult spot to try and trample stomp anything. I don't think you've really got the. You'd have to take 2 leaving engagements to try and trample stomp that 1 stinger way far north of you, which doesn't seem worth it.
Not quite.
Yeah, so just pivoting in place and swinging up at that knight. Probably because that was where the last order marker was at. So even if it happened to be a knights, this way you're guaranteed to take out that last OM.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was on Kaemon, which makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, man, really, really good, strong round from Doc there. Being able to snipe Kaemon and.
Yeah, I think putting 2 and 3 on Kaemon there is probably risky, a mistake.
Yeah. And
just because It's because it's so clear. Once you reveal the order marker 1 on stingers, it's just so clear that that's your 2 and your 3.
Mm-hmm.
That Tor-Kul-Na just has a lot of opportunity to deny you taking that turn.
Yeah, especially where Tor-Kul-Na was already adjacent to him.
And then Doc wins initiative here, so basically gets 3 back-to-back turns.
Takes a disengagement swipe, but I'm sure he's okay with that. Be able to just get up here and start killing stuff.
Yeah, stomps that guy. Then probably move back down and attack that same stinger he took a disengage from height. Because that stinger's down on a 1 height, so if he goes back to the 2, swing down with 8 dice.
Mm-hmm. Or
I'm not sure what that was.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where this rat is coming from. It's doing a fun little dance though.
Do the rat dance, everyone. Okay, looks like we're back to where we were now.
Your usual mid Heroscape game dance break.
Kind of like the 7th inning stretch in baseball.
Yeah. Yeah, and now
now it becomes real tough for Veggie.
Yeah, this order marker efficiency is just awful now. We got 2 stingers and Gilbert trying to put 3 more wounds on Tor-Kul-Na. Really, it's not the worst thing ever. You do have all of this other stuff to try to go through, but obviously you're just focusing on Tor-Kul-Na right now.
And Tor-Kul-Na's positioned really well here. So even if Veggie wanted to take leaving engagements, there's no way to get a stinger up on height to attack down on Tor-Kul-Na this turn.
Right.
Because the Nagrub is blocking. The Nagrub and Tor-Kul-Na are blocking the only paths to getting up on those 3 heights.
Yeah.
But imagine that stinger moves adjacent to Tor-Kul-Na just to get an even ground attack. Yeah.
I see that. Yeah, move that one up to here. So do you think
the downside of that is that you end up lining up the trample stomp though, so maybe you end up moving them somewhere else to try and deny a double trample stomp.
Do you think it's worth going for a leaving engagement attack with this stinger? Maybe coming up to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, like up to here even, just to kind of like spread out. If you've got one there, spread out and try to take some even ground attacks.
Well,
looks like it's going a little different.
Still disengage, but moved adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other I presume the other stinger is going to try and get somewhere. Oh no, yeah, it did move up there where you were describing.
I promise I forgot this part. I forgot these specific moves. I did not say that because I believe I saw this part. I don't remember.
And I think this is an interesting point to point out that now Veggie is draining. So you notice going for the drain there. Now that you swapped from going from very far ahead in the matchup to significantly behind, and really needing that extra dice to try and give yourself a shot.
Right, and it almost
it does hit, and you get almost you get Tor-Kul-Na down to 1 life there.
Yeah, so
of course, trample stomp vengeance.
Let's just try to make this game closer, if we can, guys. That'd be nice.
So he's likely to get 1 life back there. I'm sure Doc will end up killing that Nagrub for a free life.
Right. Veggie lost a turn on the stingers. I think at this point that's probably a risk you maybe had to take anyway.
Yeah, taking the order marker on Gilbert there isn't great. Because even if you lose the stingers, it means Tor-Kul-Na is going to be a really far ways away from Gilbert. So Gilbert's not going to be able to get a shot on him anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a no risk, a no downside risk.
Yep, and just like you said, Doc passing up his 3rd turn in order to just stay by the Nagrub and get that wound healed, which will be huge.
I guess so Doc will probably take OM1 on Nagrubs and then 2 and 3 on Tor-Kul-Na would be my suspicion.
And there's just such a big difference in this case between a 1 life 5 defense figure and a 2 life 5 defense figure. When you're going
1 on rat. Yeah, rats make a lot of sense here. That's fair. You can get that rat back on Waynick on the south end, or come up and try and engage Gilbert again, depending on which you'd prefer. The rat that's on Ulanivia on the north end is certainly staying where it is.
Oh yeah, that one. Having 7
now that glyph is fantastic. Yeah.
Like I feel like
after was in my earlier. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I feel like a lot of the time when I see the unique attack glyph on a map, like unless a player specifically has like Maro Warriors or Krav Maga or something like that, like especially when you've got one main hero that you're attacking with, I feel like that glyph, if it's gone for, usually this kind of goes to waste. But in this one, where he's had it the whole time he's been activating Tor-Kul-Na, that's been huge, having 7 attack this whole time.
Yeah, and I have to take back my initial comments from the beginning of the stream now, because I had mentioned how I didn't think that glyph would end up coming into play for a long time because Braxas doesn't need it. But then Braxas ended up dying so fast that
Right,
the relevance of having a rat on that glyph ended up making a big difference a lot earlier than I would have expected it to.
So your call wasn't wrong. You just didn't predict the timing.
Yeah. Didn't predict that 11 out of 12, but that's okay. That's
Yeah.
a difficult prediction to make. And yeah, so you've got a rat that's jumping down on Wannick, plus a rat that takes
2.
Wow,
two
rat
hits,
actually
nice.
does 2 wounds. Maximal offense from a rat.
And now Gilbert has to run up here in order to kill the Wannick rat.
Yeah.
Which in turn is another good hit.
And the other rat, can get back there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you still got to just get him off Wannick, because that's order marker 2 on Gilbert. So Gilbert's still giving himself a shot to keep Wannick clear at the end of the round if he wants to.
That's true. So it looks like Doc is probably deciding right now, but it looks like he's probably considering not going on to Wannick because of that final attack that Gilbert has.
Possibly. There's also a chance that Doc might want Gilbert to go down onto Wannick so that Tor-Kul-Na can get the height adjacent to it.
Oh, that's true.
Because Wannick isn't really that scary for Doc right now, because at this point Eldgrim's still around and at full life. Yeah. So plus 3 rounds of Eldgrim taking wounds. Yes, that's 4 rounds of your start zone taking wounds. This game is not going to last that long. Like,
yeah,
Tor-Kul-Na is going to either kill Gilbert or be killed within 4 rounds, almost for sure. So it ends up
if not
hurting Veggie a lot more than it hurts Doc.
Yeah, if this game goes on another 4 rounds, then that's just even more unexpected stuff happening. Yeah, so Veggie's last turn of the round, needs to get Gilbert into a position where he can get a good attack on Tor-Kul-Na, hopefully, if he is able to win an ish.
Yeah, it's interesting because all the places where he could do that leave him in such a terrible position if he does lose initiative.
Right. Yeah.
Like I think all the spots that I'm not seeing anywhere where he could put Gilbert where Gilbert wouldn't be able to. Yeah. So this anywhere that he put Gilbert to be able to jump up on that 3 height is going to be giving Tor-Kul-Na attack if you lose it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was any place where you could have gone to avoid that.
Yeah.
And just bank on an initiative switch.
I think that's an interesting decision point. Just kind of like, there's no way you're going to avoid that attack if you lose initiative. Looks like he's thus going full in on the initiative bank, because like he could have gone here, but then he would have taken a leaving engagement attack in here. So why not just bank completely on that initiative in order to just get up there without the leaving engagement?
And unfortunately for Veggie, it does not happen.
Right.
And I would this attack. Yeah, that will probably end it, and it does.
Yep. Casual 8 dice attack for the win. But man, holy cow, that game was all over.
Yes, very much so. Some massive swings. Probably some of the swingiest swings you'll see in a Heroscape game on this channel or anywhere else.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if you just think back half an hour ago, what would have happened if that 5 leaving engagement had hit? The game would have just been over half an hour ago.
Oh yeah, so. Yeah. Or like, I mean, and even like Braxas, even if Braxas takes more than 3 turns to die, then that's more knights that are killed that Tor-Kul-Na doesn't have to go through. I mean, there were swings both sides. That's crazy. That's an awesome game.
The Doc ends up taking it down with 2 life Tor-Kul-Na left. Yeah, I mean, that initiative for sure was. It's not that likely Gilbert would have been able to kill Tor-Kul-Na on the first turn, even if he wins initiative there. It's you're rolling 3v5, hoping for 2 wounds, but the best you can look for at that point in time.
Yeah, at that point you just gotta Just got to put it all in. You just got to risk it for the biscuit, which is a saying that has not been said as much on this channel since True Left. I need to say that more. But yeah, no,
biscuits are good rewards.
Mm-hmm. And I think we saw a lot of those calculated risks in this game, like the 5-die disengagement attack, and just like other plays that the players were making just to like go for those swings. So it was a swingy game. We saw it happening on both sides, but it was also, I feel like, very calculated risks that both players were taking. And like putting Gilbert down here, 5-die disengagement. Even the other disengagements that Tor-Kul-Na was taking, disengaging with a stinger in order to move it up here to take a shot on Tor-Kul-Na. Yeah,
for sure. Certainly a lot of very, very, very meticulous risks that were taken. And I think that's, probably essential if you're going to see a game that has swings that are this massive, because in order to get those swings, you end up having to find yourself in a situation where you have to take a big risk. And then, if it pays off, you get those massive swings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we saw, I almost feel like it was doing just about nothing but paying off for both sides for the most part. Until that Gilbert at the end. But the game was just about decided at that point. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And that was a really good game. I'm really glad we were able to do this one together, Chris. Thanks for joining me for it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always good being on the channel. Watch some high levels Heroscape. Get some commentary on it out there.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you were joining for this one in particular, because I think you brought a lot of really good insight to the game, and it's like a lot of knowledge about, especially with like Tor-Kul-Na and stuff that I admittedly don't have as much experience with. So yeah, definitely glad to have you on. Hope you're able to join again soon. Yeah,
and it'll probably be done before anyone who's listening actually hears this message. But Online Con has started and is happening this weekend. So if you are watching this, it's probably already been finished. But you should definitely go on heroscapers.com and hopefully you participated in it. But if you didn't, there'll be tons and tons of write-ups about all the games. There are some threads on there that are designed. I think Kevin Dola created one specifically for just writing up battle reports from the games. So that can be a fun read if that's the type of thing you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that 10 Points Under will have plenty of good content coming out from this weekend of the massive number of games that will be happening over Friday through Sunday.
Oh yeah, I'm expecting a lot of games coming from this event. And even with the amount of games I plan on being able to record, I won't even be getting half of them if you think about it. I won't, probably not even a quarter of the games that are happening. So I think that's a great thing to mention. Thanks for mentioning that. I'll be sure to include the battle report thread in the description so that anybody watching this, if you want more Heroscape battle report action going on, lots of cool games that I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of good ones. I'm sure I'm going to miss a lot of good ones too, though. So make sure you check out that thread. That'll be a lot of good stuff for you. We're only a couple days in, and there are already a good amount of really good reads going on in there. So make sure you check that out,
including actually of this matchup. So if you liked this video and you haven't seen that threads yet, both Doc and Veggie ended up putting fairly detailed reports on that thread right after this game happened, like that same night. So some good content related to this game as well.
Yeah, you can get some good player perspective with it too, which is all really, really, really cool to get. But yeah. Thanks again, Chris, for joining. Do you have anything you'd like to share with the viewers before we sign off?
No, probably not beyond what we've already talked about. Hope you all enjoyed the game, and thanks again for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to having you on again. For you listeners, or viewers, I guess, might just be listening. I don't know. Viewers out there, thanks for watching the video. Thanks for joining us for this one. Again, there's going to be a lot more cool games coming up. Make sure you keep paying attention to the channel, because there's just going to be lots and lots of cool games coming up. Lots and lots of cool co-casters as well coming up. We had Chris today. We're going to have enough games. Maybe we'll be able to get Chris again, depending on availabilities and stuff. I don't want to promise too hard on anybody else's behalf, but I'd love to have Chris on again for some more of these games. But yeah, just lots of stuff to look forward to. So yeah, just keep your eyes peeled for good things to come. Make sure you remember what a glorious world it is that we live in, and this will be 10 Points Under and Out.